The universe is calling you. The universe is calling me. It speaks both day and night. It's full of dark and light.
Well, hey, welcome everybody to the Sky Tour Radio for tonight. I am Mark D'Antonio, and that guy over there, that guy right there, that's Daryl Mason. Hey, Daryl, how you doing?
Hello, Mark. I'm good. You? Hello, everybody.
I'm all right. Tara's got the night off tonight. We wish her well. And I wanted to start off by letting everybody know that my background, I'm an astronomer. This is what we look like, da-da-da. And we have our nice remote observatories around the country. We've got one here in Connecticut. We have another in Arizona in the desert. And we have a third one going in. We just talked today about moving forward with that now that we have some funding in place. And we're going to be adding that third telescope very soon now to that desert location. So there'll be 3 telescopes. Technically, all 3 could run at the same time, which we also changed our infrastructure so we could run all 3 observatories from one location at the same time. Not a small feat, but boy, oh boy, it's really exciting, and I'm really getting excited about it. And on top of it, the 4th project is the mobile remote system. We're going to be taking it on the road, Sky Tour on the road. And so we will visit schools, universities, Daryl's house. We're going to go everywhere and see the night sky in ways that people who live in these light polluted regions could never hope to see them. And we'll show them the sky right over their head that's hiding up there behind all the light pollution. Daryl has been telling us in the past about how the light pollution where he lives has been getting steadily worse over time.
Oh, yeah.
And that's a sin. That's sinful. The sky has been actually registered as a true ecosystem. And it's known, in fact, that the ecosystem of the night sky is something that helps people psychologically, and it's actually good for your health to have a nice, clear evening sky with beautiful stars over your head. It's actually something that allows you to be more outside in your thinking, and the expanse of the universe has been known for decades, centuries, to open your mind and make the universe front and center instead of your phone right in front of your face.
I don't know if I agree with all that.
No?
There's stories when large cities have power outages and people see the night sky as it's meant to be seen now, and they freak out. It scares the crap out of them.
Well,
It scares the living daylights out of them.
You're making my point.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're making my point. Yeah.
I used to be able to see the Milky Way from my yard. Those days were long gone.
Well, see, that's interesting because the International Dark Sky Association would have something to say about that. Okay, for instance, here in where I live in Connecticut, okay, at the moment, the skies in my small town of Terryville, Connecticut, which is in the northwestern part of the state, in a county called Litchfield County. This area prides itself on being dark, but we needed dark sky laws to be put into place so that it would stay dark. And so now, throughout the whole state, it's now, believe it or not, is a dark sky state. Makes no sense to me because so much of the sky is lit up by cities anyway that it makes it hard to actually believe that any of that would have any effect and make any difference. But it does. In my front yard here, if you just go out right there into my front yard, okay, about 60 feet, we used to have a dome out there, and that's our our second SkyTour live stream building that's going back in. That telescope's behind me. You've seen it a few times, those that are watching. And this dark sky here, it's actually been getting darker. And that's because Connecticut was championed for a dark sky state status by an astronomer by the name of Arthur Upgren. Now, Art was the director of the observatory of the university where I got my astronomy degree. And it's with him I had that famous argument that I've talked about where I said that I believe it's a populated universe. You remember that whole argument I used to have there? I mentioned it a few times. And I told him, yeah, based on carbon, blah 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 blah, and that it's probably life all over the universe. And he basically said he denied that it was possible. And as it turns out, it's not only possible, but very likely is happening. That there's life elsewhere based on carbon. The James Webb Telescope has spotted some really cool things. Okay, like dimethyl sulfide, which is a compound that can only be created in the presence of life. So it's something very fascinating. That's tentative research. We're not going to really discuss that until we know it's actual research with its final details. But it's very possible that we'll find life elsewhere. They just found carbon on Europa. Okay, again, James Webb saw the signature of carbon. Now, not surprising to me, really, because carbon is the fourth most abundant element in the whole universe, number 4. The first one is hydrogen. The second one is helium. The third one, most people probably don't know, is oxygen, and then carbon. So oxygen and carbon stand to make up most of the life in the universe, along with the hydrogen, the ubiquitous hydrogen atom, which is everywhere. Hydrogen, oxygen, and carbon, along with nitrogen and phosphorus and sulfur, these elements form a lot of our DNA and the basis of the fundamental building blocks of life called amino acids, right? And then those nucleotides make up DNA. And so, it stands to reason that there's a lot of this out there in the universe. And when, and you might say, what's that have to do with dark sky? I'll tell you, because I'm going to somehow link it in just a moment. When you think about those elements that make up life, right? The idea is you have to be able to observe the universe in order to see that. On the Earth, it's hard for us to do that. We have to go to a mountaintop, right? We have to go to like the Gemini telescope on Mauna Kea or one of the other telescopes. We have to go to the Canary Islands, to Mount Teide, where there's all kinds of institutions that have telescopes up there. In fact, I've used some of them. But the problem is that the people in the continental United States, they're limited by their location as to what they can see in the night sky. And you really need some really good, solid light that hasn't been polluted by other spectral signatures. Things like, you don't want to see sodium in your spectrum, but you do see sodium from the emission from the sodium vapor lamps. You don't want to see broad-based spectrum signatures like you see with the LED lighting that's out there now. Daryl, you've complained about LED lighting around you, right? The sky kind of that orangey to like a bluish now.
Yeah, my sky used to be dark, and then it turned that ugly baby aspirin pink color, and then now it's turning white from the LEDs. And the town has supposedly said they're in favor of light pollution controls, but you go downtown here, and they have unshielded fancy Victorian street lights, LED street lights everywhere downtown, and it's just lit up like daylight down there.
Yeah.
I think we're fighting a losing battle, but that's just me.
No, that's not just you. There's a lot of people that feel the way you do.
Well, as for life, some famous person, I don't remember who, said life is the universe knowing itself. And I would like to think that that's the case, that it's everywhere, but who knows? Maybe we'll find out someday.
I tend to think that life is probably everywhere. In our little myopic view of the universe, we're seeing it through our little binoculars we've created, and they're slanted by how much funding this university gets versus that university over there. Okay, and so we don't get to see all of the data because this university over here is going to keep it to themselves because they don't want anyone else to see it because that's where they get their money from and their endowments. And then this university is doing the same thing. So because of that competition in the knowledge arena, and the fact that in order to read an article, sometimes you actually have to pay big money to actually be able to read an article. Now, luckily, I have a university affiliation, and it allows me to get discounts with articles like in the Astrophysical Journal or Nature or some other of these journals. But you still have to pay to play in order to learn. And that's something that I think the internet's done somewhat well. But there's no vetting on the internet, right? I mean, I've seen people very, very authoritatively state that the earth is flat and give 1,000 reasons why it's true. And if you didn't know any science, you could easily be swayed to that thought process and say, wow, I've been wrong all this time, kind of a thing. But when you know science, you just want to knock their lights out because they're sounding authoritative with authority they never earned, and that really bothers me. um but again, as far as life and universe, to be fair, we still haven't found any. No matter what people say, and when I hear people say, oh, we've been going to Mars for decades. Oh, really? You have? In your mind you have. Okay, there's a lot of people that will get up on the stage and claim, I've been to Mars. One guy even says he did it with Obama. Do you remember that guy?
No,
Oh, yeah.
I don't think I want to.
I think you're right.
Well, I think it's interesting that some old results are coming back now.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of Mars, when the Viking landers landed on Mars, they got such strong results from some of the tests on the landers.
That's right.
That they thought it was life, and then they said, well, it's the results were too strong, I think, to put it simply, and they discounted it. And now some people are coming back and saying that maybe they really did see something.
Yeah, what Daryl's talking about are the there's these little ovens that would heat up samples of the soil on Mars, and the results of the soil heating would give off certain compounds and gases, and the outgassing could tell them a lot about the past because those elements and those compounds bound up in the soil were released under heat and pressure. And so that release told them something about the potential for hydrocarbons and carbon based potential life. And they were kind of controversial at the time because no one was ready to hear that, I don't think, but over time, that's eased. And so now, revisiting the Viking data, people say, oh, you know what? They might have been right all along. They might have been right all along. So that's something very interesting. It's something that I think is still going to be followed up on, I am sure. But I will say that as far as there being life elsewhere in the universe, we will probably find life in our own solar system first. And it's going to be in the form of microbial life. There's been some tantalizing hints. The famous meteor that came down in Antarctica, they found it actually had what looked like bacteria in it. Maybe that was real. Maybe it was contamination, but it was inside the meteor. So it'd be kind of hard to think about the contaminating factors. But, rocks do have fissures and breaks in them. So it might have been. But on the other hand, we do know that Mars once had an atmosphere. sort of like ours, more chilly there always, was never as warm as here. But we do know about extremophile life, and it's usually microbial, small things that can live. And under the south pole of Mars, just recently, in the last several years, they found a massive, I think it was a 12-kilometer long underground lake, basically an aquifer of salty, briny water. And we do know that in salty, briny water that things can live, extremophile life, as it's called. And it's possible that there's life in that little underground reservoir. It might be all that's left, right? But remember, every NASA mission is charged with finding life either past or present, right? That's why every single lander that's ever gone to Mars has several experiments dedicated to finding potential life. So, you know, all we can do from our planet is look up in the sky through our telescopes. And again, we're just analyzing light. We're just seeing frequencies coming in. Frequencies that the higher they are, the bluer they are, and the bluer the light looks. And the lower they are, the redder they are, and the redder the light looks, the longer wavelengths or the lower frequencies. So, and the electromagnetic spectrum of light, at the very, very high end, we have, cosmic rays, gamma rays, X-rays right up there. Okay. We also have ultraviolet light, and then we come into the visible spectrum, which is a tiny little fraction, right, from the blue end down to the red end that we can see. And then past the red end, we've got microwaves, radio waves. We've got infrared energy all the way out there, and every time you hear a song on the radio that's terrestrial through an antenna, that's coming in through light. But light you can't see, light that's longer wavelength, light that's redder than the reddest thing you can see. And that's the radio waves. So it's kind of interesting to think that our entire interface to the universe is through the spectrum, right? And when we talk about sound, we're getting vibrations in a medium called air. And those vibrations compress the air a little bit and allow it to decompress at certain points, right? As it's moving along, you get a propagated wave, and our ears have been evolved to vibrate in a certain way and convert that into signals that our brain understands as the sound of a bear pooping in the woods, right? Because that's where they do it. So I hear. Okay. So obviously, the universe is a really interesting place overall, and it's really interesting to ask basic questions like that. And that's what I think, and Daryl's part of this. That's what I think Sky Tour Livestream is about, our observatories. We want to answer questions not just about the Earth and inner space like the deep ocean, but outer space. What's up there? What's it look like? Where's it come from? What's the genesis as we understand it now? And we take a lot of images of the same object over again over the course of several years. And we do that so that people that watch our streams can then go back and actually review them and put them side by side and compare them and see if anything's changed. Now, with our telescope's resolution, it's not necessarily going to be easy to see, but there are certain things that will change, okay, and that can be viewed over the course of just a few months to a few years over time. And maybe if you join us at Sky Tour live stream, skytourlive.org, you'll have a chance to check it out with us. And you should come check it out, because we are very excited to have all comers with us. Everybody who wants to join us can join. It's free. And you can contact me directly at contactskytour@gmail.com if you want. All right. And you can also join our Patreon if you really want to, and see some of these miraculous objects that we come up with. And Daryl's seen the change to our observatory over time. The images just seem to be getting better and better, and we are changing our equipment in order to avail ourselves of some of the latest technology, and that's what helps us, But look, I think you would enjoy it. If you haven't joined us yet, I would hope that you would. Okay. So One of the things, in fact, our producer wrote us privately a message about the rising number of satellites in our night sky. Now, all of you listening to us, how many of you have seen uh, the the satellites from Starlink up there? Okay, first of all, as the Mutual UFO Network's chief photo and video analyst, I can tell you right now, I have seen tons, lots of people sending videos of this strange alien invasion. They say, beads in the night sky. These are UFOs landing. They tell you. It's like, well, okay, I understand. If I saw that like that and didn't know about Starlink, I would be very excited too. When I first saw a sounding rocket launch, I didn't know it was a sounding rocket, and I saw these amazing weird patterns of bluish red appearing in the night sky. I was like, what is that? And I called an alert network to report it, and they said, "Oh yes, that's from Wallops Island, Virginia. It's a sounding rocket, Black Knight or whatever, not Black Knight, something like. There was a certain type of rocket that launched it. Anyway, so we see that, and we also see satellites. Daryl, have you seen a Starlink train yet? Satellites.
Yes, I have several times.
Okay.
Reddit is one of the few social media outlets I go to, and it is a daily occurrence, multiple times a day. People post poor quality cell phone images. Gee, what did I see in the sky last night? Is it space junk? Is it UFOs? And it's gotten to the point that me and anybody else who answers now is the answer is Starlink. The answer is always Starlink. And seeing Starlink trains in the sky, it was pretty cool the first few times, but it loses its charm pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And ultimately, it's just, more light pollution and more things getting in the way when you try to take a picture, an image. We can hardly take an image on Sky Tour Live now without having one or more satellites mar the image.
That's correct. And if you really want to see them in force, as winter approaches, wait until we start imaging the Orion region again. Um, there, where Orion's constellation basically passes north and south of the celestial equator, there's a lot of equatorial satellites that come through, and you cannot take a picture of Orion now, especially the Orion Nebula, without seeing 3, 4, 5, 7 satellite trails going through your image constantly. It's just ridiculous, but on the other hand, I will say this: the observatory out there is green. We run entirely on solar power, and our internet comes from Starlink. So I guess we're in kind of in bed with the enemy, so to speak, right? So without it, we were using HughesNet or Viasat, which is a different service. And although it worked, it was slow and it wasn't really the best. So unfortunately, um, we had slowdowns and sometimes complete stalls. And I think I'm past the stalls. We're in what was called for Starlink, we're in a low bandwidth area. And the relationship between low and high bandwidth areas has to do with the amount of overlapping coverage you get. Because the satellites don't just go straight through; they come through on a diagonal, and they kind of overlap. So when this one's just leaving, got another one coming in. Okay, when this one's leaving, you got another one coming in here, and it just keeps going all night long like that. Sometimes you have 3 at once, and for those moments, the satellite internet is spectacular, and the throughput is amazing. And then when you get only one, it goes away a little bit. But we're actually doing okay out there, and I hate to say it, but the more that they put up, the more we'll have that higher throughput and that higher bandwidth. Right now, the bandwidth is at least 10 times more than it was with just Viasat. So I have to say, Yes, it's bad. Yes, they're in there. But guess what? The software we use has a way of removing satellite trails from our imagery. And that's something that I will put to use at some point. So that said, um, uh, that is that is the nature of the beast when it comes to doing remote astronomy like this. We don't have a choice. We have to worry about it, but there's nothing we can do. We get nothing we can do. So, um, and Daryl, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Clatu Barada Nicto.
Okay, that's right. He's referring to The Day the Earth Stood Still, one of my favorite movies. And of course, we humans messed it up for everybody else trying to kill the robot. And what happened? We shot what's his name, Klaatu or whoever. What was his name? Klaatu, was that the guy's name?
Yes.
Yeah, we shot Klaatu.
They also used the phrase in the Bruce Campbell Evil Dead movie, Army of Darkness.
Really?
And, oh, yeah. He got into trouble when he couldn't remember how to say it.
Oh, okay.
And he unleashed the powers of darkness when he couldn't remember Klaatu Barada Nicto. Funny movie.
It is. Sounds funny. It really sounds funny.
Have to be a Bruce Campbell fan, I suppose.
I suppose. I see we got a lot of people out here watching. It's so nice to see you guys out here. Thank you for joining us. And as I said, Tara's got the night off. I wish her the best. And I know that Marianne Robb, who is she's our COO or CFO. I can't remember. It's written down somewhere. We changed the titles. She's our CFO for SkyTour live stream, and we have a SkyTour nonprofit. So she's out there listening and watching to make sure I don't say anything stupid, And Isabella's listening and watching. And Isabella's going to be important in a little while when we talk about some of these other objects that are coming up that we're going to look at. Now, I wanted to mention, and I mentioned this to Daryl earlier, that one of the things that's interesting about the universe is that there are so many places in the universe that we just don't really understand. Everybody sees pictures like this and say, "Ooh, the Milky Way," right? And I took this picture. This was in our Arizona site, and if you notice, that orange band at the bottom of this image here, that's sunset. Okay, that's the sunset light, and the Milky Way is still quite visible at sunset. I mean, that shows you how dark it is out there. Or how transparent it is at night. Really pretty. And Daryl's even picked out in this image. He's picked out like the Dark Horse and the Pipe Nebula that's in here and stuff.
Oh yeah, I see it right there.
Yeah, I wish we could point at it. Right, I don't have a way to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. The bright star at lower right, that's Antares, heart of the scorpion, and the stem of the pipe points in the general direction of Antares.
Yeah, I see that.
I see the teapot in Sagittarius and all that happy stuff. I see the center of the galaxy.
Yeah.
So
that's seeing it from inside. See, we when we look at galaxies, we see a lot of that dark nebula. That dark stuff you see is obscuring dust. It's not actually voids in the stars. It's actually obscuring dust that you're seeing right there.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's really cool.
Nice sky. Be a shame if something happened to it, huh?
That's right. Why would you know? Yeah. When I was out there, well, a week and a half ago. I went out on a Tuesday, came back that Friday. I just went out to collimate the system. And what's collimation? Well, I can describe it really quick. First things first, I gotta take this off. Okay. So in our system, okay, when you look at the way our system actually works, okay, here is our telescope as it arrives from the factory. At the end, you see it has that black disc in there. That's called a secondary. There's another mirror behind that black disc that you can't see. And then that clear window making a ring, that's the what's called the clear aperture. The light goes in, hits a mirror at the bottom, bounces up to that secondary mirror, and then goes back down through a hole in the primary mirror. Now, hole in the primary mirror is where you would have your camera, your eyepiece, whatever. Well, we changed that. We altered this to actually be a telescope that has a much more different approach. This is the telescope. Of course, you can't see it. That's Tara standing there on the right in her most recent foray out there. And the telescope now, instead of that black disc on the end, has an additional lens system sticking off the telescope. And on top of that, it has a camera at the front end of the telescope. And that camera at the front end is fascinating because we basically shortcut an entire path back through the primary mirror. And what's it do for us? It actually makes the telescope 25 times faster than the previous version of the telescope, which was, the one that had just that lens sticking off just that black disc in the front. Okay, this guy here, right? So this made it much faster. Okay, and now there you can see that lens. The red thing you see along that optical path there, that's actually the camera, and it's sticking off the front of the telescope. And then behind it, that black cylinder is another lens system called a hyperstar. And this gives us the ability to have a much bigger field of view. And we've most recently converted that camera, that red thing, to a camera with even higher resolution. And it shrinks the field a little bit. So we used to be 4 full moons across and 3 full moons tall in field. That's over 2 degrees across and 1.5 degrees tall. And we now change to 1.5 degrees in length and just about a half degree in altitude, half degree in size. But we have almost twice the resolution of the previous camera. So now we can show things much more detailed, and it's been really proving itself. And it's I don't know. I mean, I get very little sleep from this, as you can imagine. So with a sky like this, you basically don't want to sleep. When this foundation was poured for the observatory here uh, for Sky Tour, this cured by evening to like where I could stand on it. And once I stood on it, I looked up in the sky at night. I was like flabbergasted. I actually went and got a tripod, and I immediately started taking night sky photographs in order to see the night sky with just a regular camera. I had a tracker so I could track. And it was just amazing. For just a few seconds, you got such an amazing result, you know. So this is the remote astronomy world we live in, right? And I think it's really good. And Sky Tour live stream is right here, STLS. You can see it. Yeah, that's me with my pasty white legs. Okay. And Tara made our door. That door is made entirely of bottle caps. She's an artist and a very good one. So really cool. And Sky Tour live streams door. That's the roof on top that slides off the building. And basically, I created a building that just has like a garage door opener. And I hacked into the garage door opener electronically, and I added little solder connections to be able to control it remotely. And so that's gave us the ability to take the roof off and put it back on. We also have an all sky camera, which is up there, right there. You can see it. And that all sky camera shows us the beautiful night sky, 360 degrees, 180 degrees sky around. So it's actually quite nice, and that gives us our daily view. And to think it all started with that. It started with a flag in the ground. That's the first thing I ever put down for the observatory at the site. And so dead center under the slab is where that flag was in. So it's pretty cool. Anyway, consider joining us. We have Sky Tour Shop on Etsy if you want to go check out photos on blankets and everything. It's a whole bunch of stuff. But I really wanted to go in, and Daryl, I told you a little bit about this too. Some of the things I want to talk about tonight with you. And that was some of the most dangerous places, part 2. And one of them that we talked about earlier and that you showed me the image of first, I believe, was this guy. This is a beautiful James Webb Space Telescope image of the birthplace of a singular new star. It's not quite a star yet, but it's a protostar. And you had some comments, Daryl, that I thought were pretty nice about this. If you want to share them, you talked about what you thought about this object.
Sorry, I was on mute. Uh, I think it's beautiful. I think it's my favorite Webb image so far. What we're seeing is it's called a Herbig Haro object, that dark cloud. In the middle, there's a star coming to life inside that cloud, and the cloud is hiding it from us. But that protostar is ejecting material, I assume along its polar axes, from the polar axis of the star. It's moving really fast and it's really hot, and it just makes for a gorgeous image. It's a near cam Webb image, and you can tell by those huge diffraction spikes on the stars that it's a near cam. That's an artifact of the optical design of the telescope. I think it'd be even nicer if that wasn't there, but so much for that. I just love the picture, and I'm sure you'll expound upon this quite a bit. Have
Well,
at it.
I think it's important if you look to the upper right, you see how those look like little puffs. Okay, the farthest one to the upper right, then the next one's a little bigger. Then you have this other more massive one next, followed by a nearly continuous one back to the dark cloud. This is characteristic of these young stars. Now, Darrell said it's a Herbig Haro object. Now, these these are areas where young stars, as you mentioned, are forming by material that's collapsing gravitationally, and the temperature inside is getting very hot. All right, and the star is actually spinning in such a way as it's forming that it forms what's called an accretion disk. Now, the accretion disk is not what you're seeing here on edge. That's not what you're seeing. The accretion disk is actually smaller and is actually going from the upper left to the lower right. And those things that you see coming out are moving out of the south pole of the star and the north pole of the star. So the accretion disk goes exactly 90 degrees off of that. And so it's 90 degrees from that. So we're actually looking at effectively this material that's coming off the star. Now, why does that happen? Okay, well, as the stellar candidate is collapsing inside, that it gets denser in there, and at that density, as the density increases, the radiative outflow changes, and at some point, that collapse will be halted by the material that's trying to push out, all right, from the radiation output, and it ends up in this sort of equilibrium state, and thus anything else falling in will form an accretion disk around this young hot star that's forming. And again, that protostar, as Daryl rightly pointed out, is inside the center of this object. Now, it's somewhat poorly understood, but it gives rise to this ejection of material through the poles of this protostar formation region. And there's some thought as to what's happening through some magnetic field interactions might be causing it to eject both north and south. But you'll see that it happens not continuously, but in pulses. The upper right shows that very well. And so these, as they're called bipolar, both poles, jets go out north and south, and they're moving at hundreds of kilometers per second. And at that speed, they partially ionize any gas they see in the interstellar medium. Okay, so you see a variety of different colors there. These are false colors, but you see a variety of colors in regular light. You'll see hydrogen alpha, you'll see red because there's a lot of hydrogen in the interstellar medium. And you'll see that from the protostar's cloud that it formed in as well, because some of that will also be propelled outward. You might see oxygen, which would glow a different color, typically green in the visual part of the spectrum. And that is due to the oxygen that is just running around free in the interstellar medium, and potentially any that the star was being made with. All right. Now, this partially ionized material, when you see ionization occur, it causes things to glow. And if you're interested in learning why, then you want to look up, recombination with electrons in ionization. And you'll see that when something is ionized, the electrons jump off, leaving a positively charged nucleus behind. And when the electrons come back in, they cascade down at discrete energy levels in the atom and give off light. Depending on what atom you are, you give off a different color light. Hydrogen, predominantly red. Oxygen, in this particular case, predominantly green. So that's something to look up if you're interested in learning about it. And we see this as emission, okay? And we see it in the infrared. We also see it in the visible spectrum in many cases. So it's that ejection speed that heats up the gas in the interstellar medium and itself and makes it glow. Now, really, to just reiterate, protostars inside that dark cloud, as Daryl mentioned, these are not yet stars. Their glow and heat comes from the heat generated by this compression of the core. There's not enough heat for fusion yet. And when I say not enough heat, what are we talking about? Well, hydrogen fusion has a minimum temperature, and that's 13 million Kelvin. What is that in Fahrenheit? It's 23,399,540 degrees Fahrenheit.
Approximately, as Mr. Spock would say.
Yes, approximately. And give it to like 5 significant figures. Yeah. But that's go ahead.
What I find interesting about this is, as you mentioned, there is an accretion disk building around that protostar, and then the protostar has polar jets shooting the neat-looking stuff down to the lower left and upper right, and you see similar processes scale up across the universe. Most people, when they hear the word accretion disk, probably think of a black hole or a supermassive black hole. And like we have seen with M87 ourselves, the giant cluster, the giant galaxy in Virgo, it is a supermassive black hole, and it is shooting out jets from its poles. We can look at multispectral images of the Milky Way galaxy, and it is also shooting polar jets out from the center of the galaxy. They see them in X-rays. They see them in radio waves and stuff. I just find it fascinating that you see similar processes repeated, all the way from protostars to entire galaxies
At different scales.
at different scales.
Yeah, a very interesting observation indeed. And so I think it's fascinating as well. And, but let's, the Herbig Haro object then, we've seen Herbig Haros in some of the objects we've photographed. And particularly when we photograph an object, I think it's called the Cave Nebula, isn't it? Where we actually see a Herbig Haro down the bottom.
Could be, I forget.
I think it's in the Cave Nebula. And down south, we see a young Herbig Haro. Now, what we're seeing here, yes, this guy right here, this is definitely what you see here. This is definitely a infrared image right there. Okay. But this infrared image is just one of many that you could take of this object. You could take it in visible light and see what's visible. You could take it in ultraviolet light and see if there's anything there. But infrared is typically where it's at when it comes to the universe, because a lot of young things in the universe generate lots of heat at different frequencies. And so we'll see things in the infrared.
The whole point of the infrared being that it lets us see inside what we can't see in visible light because it's blocked by the clouds of dark nebulosity and stuff.
Except in this case.
Except in this case.
Right, because it's dense. It's very dense in there, and so that's really fascinating. So now, it's interesting because this particular object that we're looking at, this is just one of many different objects that's in the universe that's in that the James Webb has looked at The James Webb has actually had some remarkable successes, but the James Webb has also done some really interesting observations of galaxies. Now, we had a theory for how the Big Bang occurred. First of all, we had a theory. It was called the Big Bang. And it was basically that there was lots and lots of this cold, dark matter in the universe, and it was propelled at a ungodly speed away from itself because by dark energy. And this dark energy that's out there, uh, supposedly, and I tell you why I say that in a minute, and Daryl has his own ideas as well. But I think we kind of agree. Yes.
Further opponent says not. Carry on.
All right. So the point is that we had this theory. We have this theory about the Big Bang, and so we have cosmological theory that is supposed to match up with observation. And because of James Webb, we're finding that the observation is not matching up with what we expect. So, I'll give you an example. When we look back in the early universe with James Webb, okay, we see images like this. They're stunning. Okay. Now, this is of a galaxy cluster, and the left side is the mid infrared cam, I believe, and the right side is the near infrared cam on James Webb. You'll notice in the NIRCam image, you can see some galaxies that look like they're circular. In fact, the whole image looks like it's tending to be circular around the center. That's because it's a gravitationally lensed distant cluster of galaxies with a foreground cluster of galaxies doing the lensing. It literally bends the light in the same way that the sun bends starlight during an eclipse that can be seen. And don't forget the annular eclipse, by the way, later.
Yes.
So when we look at these things, we've captured these images and said, oh, that's fantastic. But what's interesting about it is that we would expect to see, when we look at these galaxies, when we look at their spectra, we would expect to see at a certain point, when you have a fully formed galaxy, you also expect that in that fully formed galaxy, you've had plenty of supernovae and thus plenty of new elements that are put out into the interstellar medium because it's supernovae that generate the periodic table elements. So we would expect to see those. But in fact, we see 4 times less than we expect. Now, that's surprisingly little. All right. And so the more massive the galaxy is, we would expect to see more stellar production. And we don't see that. We don't see what's called enrichment, the enrichment of the interstellar medium in the same way that we would expect a galaxy to work in the universe as we understand it, based on its age and its structure and how far along it is in its evolution. So one of the thoughts is that maybe these early galaxies are as fully structured as they are because they're still pulling in a lot of this pristine gas, this pristine hydrogen, and interacting with the ancient interstellar medium after the Big Bang in such a way that they can move themselves into a more massive state without having to have lots of supernovae. Now, the other thing that's interesting is that many of the galaxies we see that look like elliptical galaxies, when seen in, elliptical galaxies are just galaxies that look like balls of stars without any kind of structure around them and very little gas. Well, it turns out that as of, I guess it was a week ago or 2 weeks ago, they discovered that many of the elliptical galaxies seen by Hubble as elliptical galaxies turn out to be spiral galaxies when viewed by the James Webb. The same galaxies show spiral structure out there in the infrared that Hubble could not see. So that changes everything about the evolution of galaxies from our perspective. Now, the other thing that the James Webb went through was the concept of whether the James Webb proves or disproves that the Big Bang occurred. So, as we mentioned, the universe birth is pretty well thought out. Cosmology says that the Big Bang was due to the expansion caused by dark energy, and that the universe was stuffed full of this cold, dark matter, pushed away from everything else in the universe to then make stars and galaxies and of course associations of galaxies and many clusters. All right, and
Uh,
yes,
when the Big Bang theory was first proposed, nobody had a clue about supposed dark energy or dark matter.
correct, yeah.
That's just cosmologists trying to make the data fit their theories.
Well, that's what I'm getting to is the fact that all we have is some theory that fits the observations, and that, in fact, the next sentence here is that's the most strongly supported theory based on the observations thus far. Okay. Um, but in the past, they didn't know. And so that's why they called it the primordial superatom, when in fact, it might have been, with the observations we know now, it might have been dark energy propelling this stuff outward. Now, where did dark energy come from? When did it start? How did it start? What kicked it off? We don't know any of that. We don't know any of that stuff. No one does. There's only theory and supposition. All right. But the James Webb seemed to contradict the theory. It seemed to show that early galaxies were too well formed, indicating that they were already there only 500 million years into the existence of the universe. Now, wait a minute. If that's the case, then all of our understanding of the Big Bang is wrong. All of it. Because it would mean that galaxies were fully formed in only a few 100 million years. And that's not what Big Bang Theory talks about. Now, I don't know if that's talked about on the show, The Big Bang Theory, but that's what's talked about in cosmological circles. All
Ha
right.
ha ha.
Yes.
I hope Fred Hoyle is spinning so fast in his grave
Yeah,
you can
tell
hear
every,
him lapping up on the
yeah,
surface.
yeah. Tell everybody about Fred Hoyle. Go ahead.
Fred Hoyle was an astronomer, cosmologist back before the Big Bang Theory, and he was a big proponent of an infinite, unchanging universe. And Fred Hoyle got his nose rubbed in it when they came out with the Big Bang Theory, and maybe Fred will get the last laugh. And I kind of hope he does.
Yeah, I mean, initially it looked like the James Webb was, in fact, showing that the Big Bang Theory had some probable holes. It seemed to indicate that the timescales were all wrong, right? However, um, and I'm sorry to tell this to Fred Hoyle's spirit, there was research that showed that there are 6 galaxies that the farthest reaches of the JWST's vision agreed with the newly designed computer models about how the Big Bang occurred. So, in fact, it turns out that the James Webb observations actually are proving the Big Bang Theory correct. Now, the other thing,
Pardon me. Go ahead. Carry on.
well, I will assume that was just a cough and not
Yes.
a snide comment.
It was a raspberry, is what it was.
well, let's be fair, okay? Um, this is all theory anyway, but in terms of cosmology, we live for such a short time. We don't get to see the long-term results of things. We are back engineering the universe. It's like we're at the scene of a ship sinking, and our job is to re-engineer exactly how it happened. And that's only conjecture at best. Maybe it can be exactly right, maybe not. Okay, but we have a possibility of getting it. Now, we have about 3 minutes left or so before we got to go to a break here.
About
But
2.
Okay, on my clock it says 54. All right. Anyway, so if we talk about these distant galaxies also, one of the things I mentioned earlier was that these distant galaxies seen by Hubble that were ellipticals The James Webb shows us spirals. That's critical, actually. That's really critical because more galaxies such as this also increases the chances dramatically for extraterrestrial life. Wait, what? Yeah, because if there's more spirals, it means that there's more star formation and more likely habitable star systems that are in development in the universe. And it actually increases the chance for life out there. That's interesting. Now, that means there's more matter that can produce more crucial compounds to create carbon based life. And carbon is the best and most flexible element, all right, in the entire periodic table. And it forms the basis of life far better than something like silicon. Now, you look in the periodic table, a column in the periodic table, the things underneath each other are the most similar in potential characteristics. So right below carbon is silicon on the next row down. Silicon is the next most possible one. And that's something that we can't possibly use. So anyway,
Actually, I've seen recent studies that, again, people are bringing up the possibility of silicone as a basis for life.
well,
But we are coming up hard on a break,
I
Bart.
see it. Yeah, I know we are.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll talk about more of this when we come back. So keep with us, stick with us. Pew pew pew. We'll be right back.
Hey members, the new KGRA DB app is now available on iOS and Android devices. Gain on-demand access to any KGRA DB programming. Download any show directly to your mobile device to listen or watch on the go. Go to the App Store and search KGRA DB.
Did you know 75% of Americans are chronically dehydrated? If you struggle with focus, run low on energy, or when it's time to finally sleep, you simply can't, this can all be linked to dehydration, and Fuel Up has the answer. Our proprietary formula contains the finest cellular hydration with the strongest immune-enhancing natural ingredients. The Fuel Up system is made up of 3 different incredibly tasting varieties. Wake kickstarts your day with a jolt of caffeine. Play boosts focus while hydrating your cells. Rest not only helps you relax, but also rejuvenates your cells while you sleep. Here's what our clients have to say.
I really don't miss my coffee, and you can tell the difference.
So I'm going to take it for the energy. I'm going to take it for the play. I'm going to take it, all day.
And it works. That's the thing. It works. We love it.
Take the Fuel Up Challenge now, where we offer a feel the difference money back guarantee. Fuel Up for life.
As UFO reports come in from around the world, the Mutual UFO Network, MUFON, is there. We continue to explore new cases and build our massive database. We share our information with the world in a number of ways. If you would like to be part of our investigative team, you are always welcome. What could be more exciting than exploring the UFO question firsthand? Join MUFON, find your friends.
You're listening to the KGRA Digital Broadcasting Network. We provide unparalleled coverage of trending news in the world of ufology, cryptozoology, and paranormal phenomenon. Whether you're watching our video live stream or listening to one of our audio programs, you are getting the best from world-renowned researchers and hosts, guiding you through topics the mainstream won't touch. Miss one of your favorite programs? No problem. Head over to the members area at kgradb.com for access to our massive library of award-winning content. Make contact, stay connected, only at kgradb.com.
Hey, everybody, welcome back. Welcome back, Daryl. Good to see your avatar. And he's still on mute, so he doesn't even know what I'm saying.
Whoops. I have a
There
good
he is.
face for radio. Thank you very much.
Well, look, one of the things we talked about last week was the most dangerous places in the universe. And just to continue a little bit more about that, I'd like to go down that path again. And we have some time. And I wanted to ask you if you wanted to do your deep dive now.
Sure, if you like.
Sure. Why don't we do that? So, ladies and gentlemen, deep dive with Daryl. And let's find out what's up there. Take it away, Daryl.
Okay, give me just a second here. Let's see. Okay. We're going to start off a little different tonight. We're not going to be in the west at sunset, not yet anyway. This is October the 14th, presently at about 8:40 in the morning, my time. And golly, what's that black dot on the face of the sun? That's the moon. I have the atmosphere turned off so we can see the sky at the time. But October 14th, 2023, there's going to be an annular eclipse of the sun. An annular eclipse is the so-called ring of fire eclipse. It's when the moon is too far away in its elliptical orbit about Earth to totally cover the sun. This can be a combination of the sun being relatively close and the moon being relatively far away. The end result is the same, though, that the moon fails to totally cover the sun.
I have images.
I'm sorry?
I do have images. If you want to see the images of an annular eclipse.
Do I need to drop
No, I don't think so. There's one.
Okay.
Okay, that's what it looks like, and that's why it's called a ring of fire eclipse, because it certainly does look like a ring of fire. That's a beautiful shot, actually.
It is.
That's a telephoto shot. Another one is this one, an annular eclipse on the horizon of the sun. Isn't that beautiful? That is just something. So yeah, so that's what an annular eclipse looks like. Go ahead, Daryl.
The path of annularity, it's analogous to the path of totality, like for the April 8th, 2024 total eclipse. The path of annularity is rather narrow. I forget offhand. It's going to be on the order of like 100 miles across, and you have to be inside that path to see the donut, the ring of fire effect. In fact, I'm going to change to this. Hopefully, that didn't show. Give me just a second here.
Okay.
It's going to be whoops. Darn it. Bear with me, folks.
No problem.
Let's see. Present. Share screen. There we go. Okay. Does that show it now?
Not yet.
There we go. Okay. Hopefully that shows it now. Okay. This is the eclipse path. It's going to start over the U.S. in the state of Oregon. It's going to pass heading southeast. The closest it's going to come to me is down in the Four Corners area where Colorado, Utah, Arizona, and New Mexico come together. The very center line of the eclipse path is just a little bit south of that. It's going to pass across Albuquerque, if I remember correctly, then head down across Texas and leave the U.S., but it's going to continue across Central America and ultimately South America. If you're not inside this path, what's going to happen is you're going to see a partial eclipse. That is, you'll see the sun cross off center you'll see the moon cross off center to the sun, and hey, it's just a partial eclipse. Now, even if you're on the center line of the path of annularity, it's considered to be just a special case of a partial eclipse, as in not total. but it's really cool to see. And I think it was May 10th, 1994, I traveled down to El Paso, Texas, when there was an annular eclipse, and it was perfect weather, and I got to see it. I took pictures of it. Unfortunately, this was on film because it was 1994, and I never had the images digitized. I should do that someday. But it was really cool to see. And what I see through the telescope, I had a safe solar filter on the telescope, and I shot it from beginning to end. And what we saw was the ring of fire, like what Mark showed you. And otherwise, though, well, I'm not going to travel to see it this time. I've seen one annular eclipse. Not sure if you've seen one annular, you've seen them all, and I don't travel well anymore, frankly. So I'm just going to stay home and watch it from my home here. And if I remember, it's going to be about an 80% partial, 80% coverage, partial eclipse. So that's the map. And the farther west you are, the better. If you're in the eastern U.S., you will see just a slight partial. So anyway, so much for that. And now I'm going to go back to Stellarium, and it's going to be at midpoint of the eclipse, 10:30 my time, on the morning of October 14th. If you have an interest and you think you have a good view, it's always worth looking at. Do not look at an annular eclipse naked eye, though. There's still full strength sunlight going on. You need optical aid. You need eclipse glasses or an eclipse viewer to look at it safely. So for now, we're going to go back to excuse me, present time today. And here we are in the west before sunset. Let me change things. So the sun just set. The sun is entering Virgo now. Here's Mars. It's very close to the horizon. Mars is still racing along behind us, trying to keep up, but he's slowly losing ground day by day. And if you see the atmosphere there, well, see, Mars is pretty much lost in the sunset. But Mars is still trying to catch up with us. Mars is actually way over on the far side of the sun right now. And even if we could see it, it would not be impressive because it's so far away. But from here, looking at the sunset sky, the evening sky, Arcturus, fourth brightest star in the sky, he's still up there, but he's dropping night by night. And he's followed by Vega, the fifth brightest star in the sky. You see them in the eye, you see them by eye. You might think Vega is slightly brighter, just it's actually a little bluer. Arcturus is kind of a yellow color. But here goes the stars of summer. Now, facing south now, after sunset, Scorpius is still hanging in there in the southwest after sunset. I mentioned this before. This time of year, because the sun is, we went through the autumn equinox back on the 23rd of September. The sun is now south of the celestial equator, and the days are getting shorter. We're losing several minutes of sunlight a day. And the result is that Scorpius kind of seems to freeze in this part of the sky at dusk. But it is still on the way out. You'll see now it's 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock. There goes Scorpius now. Scorpius is gone by 9 o'clock at night. But if you go out and catch it at dusk, you can still see Antares and Dashuba, the forehead of the scorpion. Antares is the heart. Here's the cat's eyes or the stinger of the scorpion. You can still see them during dusk, and you can say your last goodbyes for the year. Otherwise, Sagittarius, the teapot, he's following Scorpius. He's right on the right on the meridian line after sunset. And this time of year, you'll see the teapot is tilting more and more toward the west. And the Milky Way, if you can see it, is said to be the steam coming out of the teapot as you're tipping the teapot to pour the tea. So there's that. And the other bright stars this summer are still up. Aquila, Altair and Aquila the Eagle, and Vega and Lyra, and Deneb and Cygnus. Those make the summer triangle. And we have been looking at all the cool stuff in Cygnus and farther north, like up in Cepheus and Cassiopeia and all. And Mark might like to share some pictures if he wishes.
We have a few that we've done. One of the things you've been talking about the summer Milky Way, and one of the things we look at in the summer Milky Way is this one. This is called the Omega Nebula, and this is with our new camera, and so the detail is far greater and deeper than we've ever seen. So it's really wonderful. Another one, if you go into before you get to Cassiopeia, you're zipping up the Milky Way towards Cygnus. So why don't you show us Cygnus up there at the top and zoom in on the North American area, and I'll show people the North American Nebula and the Pelican Nebula. I know it's a little.
Me to zoom in, wouldn't you?
I wouldn't I? Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Okay. Well, here's the North American Nebula. Here's the Pelican Nebula. Unfortunately, they're upside down now, but that's what I get for playing with Stellarium. Okay. And they're right next to the bright star Deneb, which is the tail of the swan or the head of the Northern Cross.
Yeah.
But imagine you're holding the map upside down. Here's North America. There's Florida. There's Mexico. We look at the Cygnus Wall a lot, that area right there.
Which I'll show.
Here is the Pelican.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So he's showing you that now, and let's show you what it looks like in our system. Here is that part called the wall. All right. Now, if you look at that dark area at the top, that is that dark area that you can now outline, Daryl, with your cursor, or you could if you zoom back in. I know, isn't this just fun? Yeah, there you go. That the bay,
the dark area there is the Gulf of Mexico, and this here, this is all a large cloud of dark nebulosity, dust and gas. The bright star or stars that are illuminating the North America and the Pelican Nebula are actually hidden from our view behind this cloud of gas.
Yeah, and let's take a look. Oh, sorry.
They're closer to us.
Yeah, let's take a look at that area again. So here, at the top of this screen here, you can see that dark patch that he's talking about, and from here you can actually see that it's a dark mass of dust, and it is obscuring stars behind it. You can imagine what's behind it is more glowy nebula, like you're seeing here. And down the bottom, you see that much richer, denser, more color saturated area in red. That is what he mentioned as the wall. It is a dividing line between the more dense dust and gas and the more rarefied or less dense area of gas and dust on the other side. And so that's the wall, and we showcase this thing just all the time. And then next to the wall, actually off the top of the screen here in this image, is the Pelican, which is this object right here. So to the lower left of this is the rest of this here. Okay, so go to the upper right here and you get to this part. And that's called the Pelican. You can see that beautiful, rich red saturated area. A lot of hydrogen gas in here being excited. And the reason it's not red throughout, like this is because there's a lot of dark dust in here that's muting the hydrogen emission quite a bit. So it's still brightly glowing, and as you got closer to it, it would glow brighter once you got through some of this dark dust. But this is another region like we've visited before. It's really cool. So that was up there in Cygnus, near, as Daryl said, near the hindquarters of the swan, Deneb, and
I'm
carry on.
back on the whole constellation now.
I see. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Am I breaking up again?
Yeah, a little bit, but you know what? I have a solution. We'll talk about it later. You can't enact it now.
Probably want me to download Stellarium.
I do. I do. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, other things we've looked at. Here's the veil right here, and we can zoom in on that. There is the witch's broom. There is what's called Pickering's triangle.
Yes.
And everybody should know there's Alfred Hitchcock right there, as we call it on the streams.
Yeah, that's right.
You see the profile of the face. Really cool. And then we've looked at, let's see. Here's Solder Gamma Cygni. We've looked at the Gamma Cygni Nebula, all this huge area here. And I forget C27. That's the crescent, I believe.
Yeah.
And all that good stuff. Do you want to show those, Mark?
Yeah, you can keep talking for a couple minutes while I bring those files up.
Okay. Cygnus is such a rich area. They say when you look towards Cygnus, you're looking at 90 degrees to the center of the galaxy, Sagittarius, and you're sort of looking over toward the next spiral arm when we look at the direction of Cygnus. All the way down at the bottom, here's everybody's favorite double star, Alberio. That's the pretty yellow and blue pair.
Yes, sir. It is pretty.
And I think it's right there is M27 Dumbbell and the little fox, Vulpecula.
Yep. Okay, so when we're talking about the Veil Nebula, okay, it is an ancient supernova remnant. So it's a massive bubble of material blowing out from a central area, and that central area has got a designation called Cygnus X5, and they've noticed soft X-rays coming from this area and some other emissions indicating that's probably the source. And it's not very old. It's actually a few thousand years old, and it's actually the size of, it has to be, was it 5-6 full moons across? I mean, it's pretty big. But this is right here. This is the eastern side that Daryl was talking about, and you can see Alfred Hitchcock's face. If you look, tilt your head to the left, you can actually imagine that upper part is his forehead. You see that big bushy eyebrow. You see his nose and his mouth. It takes some imagination, yes. But the most important thing is that's a bubble being blown. That's part of the bubble. You can imagine the other half. If you kind of draw a circle, then you actually, on the other side of that circle, you'll get to this. And this is the Western Veil Nebula. And this feature to the right and just below center, that expanding lower quarters of that kind of nebula, that's known as the witch's broom. That part, I mean, the whole thing is kind of known as the witch's broom, but it's the veil that's on the western side. That star you see and just above center, that's white. That's called 52 Cygni. That's the number 52 Cygni in Cygnus. And that star is actually not associated with the supernova. It's a closer star to us. All right. So 52 Cygni doesn't have anything to do with it. But boy, this looks so pretty. But then in between this guy and this guy, okay, so that's on the east side and this is on the west side. In between, we have this guy. Look at that. Look at that. That is what's called the Central Veil Nebula. That's the middle part. And this could be coming out toward us. It could be going in away from us. It could be doing a mixture of the two. So you can imagine that we have the left side, the center, and the right side of this gigantic complex. And the colors are characteristic. The red is hydrogen. The green is ionized oxygen. The red is ionized hydrogen, as I said. So, and that stands to reason, because I've told you before that, the most copious element in the entire universe is hydrogen, followed by helium, followed by oxygen, and then carbon. So hydrogen and oxygen will stand to make up the bulk of material shed by exploding stars. And so there you see the proof right there. But I think this is really stunning. This is probably one of the better central veil shots we've ever taken. And again, it was taken with the new camera. And what you don't get to do is zoom in as far as you can zoom in. You can zoom in and look at little tiny structures with our new camera, which is really amazing. So this is cool. So back to you, Daryl, on the deep dive. That was the Veil Nebula.
Okay. Can you put Pickering's Triangle back up for a second?
Sure, I can. I also have the Gamma Cygni as well.
Okay.
There you go.
Pickering's Triangle, you want to see a guy get ripped off. The guy who, I don't know if you could really say he discovered it, but the guy who figured it out was not Pickering. Pickering was the director of the observatory where the guy worked who figured it out. And Pickering got it named after him just because he was the boss. So you talk about a ripoff.
Yeah.
But such is life. Okay, carry on. You wanted to go to...
I have an image of Gamma Cygni, which I'd like you to show people. Let me take this out of here so you can show people. Now, the center of the swan is noted by the star Sadr, S-A-D-R, which you see right there in the middle, the bright white one. Okay. And you'll see there's this nebula around it. And I've looked at this nebula many, many times, called the Gamma Cygni Nebula. And I've always felt it was interesting, but I didn't really get thrilled by it as much. And I don't know why. But with the new camera, I have been blown away. And I have to say that continues to this day. Let me bring it up. Here it is. Okay. Look at that amazing nebula. Now, that's Sadr, that star at the top. That's the center of the Cygnus constellation, the center of the swan. And look at this nebula. I mean, Daryl, this kind of reminds me of something. It's almost 3D to me. Yeah. It's just
Very
amazing. Nice. And this comes from the new Skytour live stream camera. And for those who want to know what that camera is, for those that are interested, it's called the ZWO ASI 183 MC Pro. So you can play that back if you want to hear it again, but it's the 183 MC Pro. And I was blown away. It has twice the resolution. And there is a certain camera combination with your telescope that is optimal. And the last one we had was something called the 294 MC Pro. All color, yes, beautiful one-shot camera. And yes, it shows images that are considered okay, fair, with our combination telescope that has a very, very fast recording capability. That's called focal length. It's really called an f2. All right, that's its F number. The lower the number, the faster optically and photographically the telescope will be. And ours is at f2. So that said, when you look at something like this, it's hard to believe you can capture all this majesty and grace in just 20 seconds. But we exposed the camera for 20 seconds, and this is what we got. Now, you got to understand, when we do this, and Daryl knows this so well, in fact, we make a joke about it. We'll go through and look at like 10 objects, and then Daryl will say, how about just one more? And he doesn't have to pull my, twist my arm. because I'll just sit there and say, yeah, okay. And we look at one more. And by that time,
Okay.
it can be 2 a.m. or sometimes 2:30 in the morning, my time. And we're going to more objects because when you got a sky like this over your head, it's really, really hard to turn it down.
You want to do one more then?
Yeah, let's do one more.
How about the crescent?
I have that. In fact, the crescent will show up in just a bit. We'll bring it back and show it again, but sure, why not?
Okay.
Because this leads into our next topic. But yeah, I have it.
Okay. We're still looking at Cygnus. Here's Satyr. Dynamis just out of view toward the top right there. And now we're going to move down just a little bit from Satyr to that oval area, C27. This is the Crescent Nebula.
That's right.
And have at it, Mark.
Yeah, now the crescent, this leads into our next topic, but I won't get into yet because I want to let Daryl finish and go through the rest of the discussion here. When he gets up to Cassiopeia, I've got some things there if he wants to show. But the Crescent Nebula in our telescope looks like this. Okay, this is an area in space where you see that kind of bright star kind of in the middle of it all. That's a special kind of star, which is our next topic tonight, and it's called a Wolf-Rayet star. Now, Charles Wolf and George Rayet in 1867 came up with the concept by studying these stars, and notice that there are many stars that tend to blow off their outer layers, sometimes millions of times the luminosity of the sun, and sometimes hotter, or anywhere between 200,000 Celsius and lower. That's huge. That's around 355,000 Fahrenheit on the surface of a star compared to 10,000 on the surface of our star. So 355,000, really, really hot. A lot of the light is coming off in the ultraviolet. It also gives off intense X-rays and gamma rays. So it's really very, very powerful. And that nebula there is the result of this star having such powerful stellar winds that it blows its own outer layers off. Now, it's destined to be a supernova at some point. And man, I hope we can see a Wolf-Rayet star go because it's going to be spectacular, right? So we'll come back to this in just a bit. Back to you, Daryl. He's trying.
Okay,
I know he's
yes,
trying.
I'm fighting Stellarium here. You wanted to do Cassiopeia?
No, I mean I just had the bubble on the show, but that's okay.
Oh, well, there's Cassiopeia up at the top, and okay, the bubble. This is the crooked W of Cassiopeia. Cassiopeia is the queen. She's the mother of Andromeda. And the shape of Cassiopeia is supposed to represent the throne that the queen is sitting on.
She'd be upside down, right?
The bright star Cap is at the top of the W. I think this is right side up right now.
Really?
Actually, yeah.
Oh.
Cap at the top.
Well, can you show the mythology? Is there a button to show that?
Yep. There she is sitting in her throne.
Interesting.
Looking at herself in the mirror.
Vain.
Yep. Vanity. And Cepheus is the king. Cepheus was Andromeda's father. Cassiopeia is her mother. Here's her Andromeda right here. And she's actually riding on the back of the winged horse Pegasus. And there's Messier 31, Andromeda Galaxy right there.
Yeah.
So go ahead and show them the bubble if you like. I don't know where it is in Cassiopeia.
Well, it's okay. In this region, we have another one of these Wolf-Rayet stars, and that looks like this. And you can see this amazing red diffuse nebula powered by that one just at the above center. You see the bubble itself, that round bubble, and just within that white region at the very top of the bubble is the star powering all of this whole region. It's a very hot Wolf-Rayet star again, well above 100,000 Celsius, maybe as high as 200,000 Celsius on its surface, and it's ionizing a lot of this region now. As one of the most dangerous areas in our universe to get to, as we've talked about, this is one of the ones. The crescent is one. The dolphin's head is one. We'll get to that in a bit. Thor's helmet is another one. And the bubble is another. These areas have these hot stars that literally would sterilize life for light years around them. And that's what we're seeing happen here. The stellar winds from these Wolf-Rayet stars are so powerful. As I said, they push their outer atmosphere right off, and you end up with just a vestige of the former star left behind, the hot core. And it's going through its processes so quickly, it's going to use up its nuclear fuel and eventually go into a supernova. So if the Wolf-Rayet's bathing of sterilizing radiation in the interstellar medium around it weren't enough, it's destined to also explode and further destroy, if not completely eliminate, some planets and stars potentially around it. So we're talking about a incredible hot region, but they're only temporary, because once they go supernova, it'll eventually cool, and the supernova will eventually allow the formation of molecules, and the supernova creates heavier elements than iron, number 26 in the periodic table, to some extent, and you would end up with basically a foundational element soup. The basic building blocks of life will be formed ultimately. Everything in your body that you're made of came from the heart of a star. And that is something that a lot of people just shake their heads at and they can't believe. That's right. You were baked. You're all baked. Okay. But baked in a nucleosynthesis kind of way, in through some fusion process. Okay. The potassium in your body was made in the heart of a star. Okay. The phosphorus made in the heart of a star. Right. Everything else made in the heart of a star. Some of you may have the hydrogen that was not a byproduct of a nucleosynthesis reaction, because hydrogen, when it makes helium, goes through a process where it gains a neutron and becomes something called deuterium, or basically a hydrogen with a proton in its nucleus and a neutron, and it forms basically it forms an isotope of helium, and in the process gives back a hydrogen. So you can be made of that kind of hydrogen, or you can be made of hydrogen that was formed originally in the Big Bang. So if you think about it, you are made of the oldest potential atoms in the entire universe. Another interesting thing to think about. And it's through processes like this where we see a supernova that will eventually come from a Wolf-Rayet star to just regular supernovae, to the dark dust that's surrounding this nebula that you can see as the dark spots. That's where life will eventually be formed, in those areas. So when I talk about this and say dark nebula are where it's at when it comes to life in the universe, I mean it. And this is the reason why. All right, Daryl, we can dispense with the bubble for now and carry on.
I probably ought to end this pretty soon. Here's the bubble right here. You see here's Cassiopeia.
Yeah.
The top of the crooked W, the bright star is Cap, and Cap and Shadar are pretty much pointing right at the bubble nebula, which is technically in Cassiopeia, but it's right between the king and the queen. So there's the bubble. Why don't I just wrap this here for now?
if you
I
want
think I've
to.
gone far enough tonight.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So
All
there
right.
we go.
So
Thank
let's
you for
thank
your
Dale.
patience, folks.
Yeah. The crowd are going wild, as we hear in Monty Python. And the crowd are going wild. All right. So, when we talk about these hot regions, we've talked about the crescent, we've talked about the bubble nebula, all right? There's others too, right? We have another Wolf-Rayet star is this one. Okay. This is the Dolphin Head Nebula. We shot this last year, Daryl, I believe. And this is with our older camera. But right there in the middle is a bright star. That bright star is the progenitor, the originating star for this nebula. Again, a hot Wolf-Rayet star. And in this particular case, the ionization that's occurred shows a lot of the green of an oxygen envelope around this particular star. And just to make it clear, hydrogen fusion is not combustion. Okay. It's not the chemical process that is fire. Okay. It is actually fusion. That's a nuclear process. And the nuclear process, as you know, in a nuclear reactor, that's not combustion. That's nuclear processes. That's where where radiation is coming out, striking a fuel pellet, and causing it to release more radiation that generates heat. Okay, and it's in fact nuclear reactors are just designed to boil water effectively, to make steam. That's all that they really do, in effect. So that said, a nuclear furnace is one that actually uses this high pressure and high temperature to cause atoms to fuse into other atoms. And that process liberates lots of energy and heat. And so it doesn't require oxygen to happen. It just happens with hydrogen alone, which, as you know, hydrogen alone is not flammable, right? It doesn't burn without oxygen around. And so that has nothing to do with stellar nuclear synthesis. It has everything to do with why the Hindenburg blew up. Okay. Hydrogen gas bags are remarkably safe. Add oxygen to the mix and they blow up. But that's the hydrogen atom reacting with oxygen, which is the catalyst, and the oxidizer, which allows burning to take place. All right. Gives it the fuel. In nucleosynthesis, no oxygen is required. The hydrogen just needs high temperature and pressure, and at a certain point, those hydrogen atoms can be pressed together, and after a few gyrations, form a helium atom. So the two protons in the center of hydrogen atom's nucleus, okay, just the nucleus, those two protons can be pushed together so hard that they form a two-proton nucleus, which is a helium nucleus. And that's what happens. And they're all isotopes, are not just hydrogen and helium. Okay. In fact, it's like helium-4 is the one, and that's two protons and two neutrons is what's actually formed in that nucleosynthesis. So those processes, again, generate lots of heat. And the star's oxygen that you see here illuminated isn't from the fuel that made the star work. It's actually what the star was made with in its envelope. It was around the core. It wasn't causing fusion. It wasn't involved in fusion. It was just made up in the star. It was part of the star. So that's what we see there, right? Similarly, we have this one. This is Thor's helmet. Again, with our old camera. When we see it with a new camera, I cannot wait, Daryl. This is going to be one beautiful image with a new camera.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, because we're going to see details we just can't even see. But if you notice, there's all kinds of complexity here. The star is not very obvious here, and I won't bother to point it out, but it's in the middle of all that. And it's blown off its hydrogen layers, and it's blown off the stellar wind has blown off the oxygen in the envelope around the core. Again, none of it was in the fusion process. All of it was just stuff that the star was made of. And now it's glowing again because of the high ultraviolet output, causing it to ionize. All right. And that's what we see. And it's just stunning. Now, one other thing that's important to understand too, um, when we talk about this envelope around the core, where did all that come from? I say the oxygen and the hydrogen gets blown off. Well, it's not just that. Any other element in the periodic table that the star was made with will end up in its composition. So if you take a spectrum of a star like our sun, you'll see that it's not just made of hydrogen. It's not just made of the helium in its core, which we don't actually see the helium in its core. But what we do see is everything on the outside of the star, outside the core. Yes, the sun's a big giant ball of hot gas, but it's not all fusing. Only a tiny central part is doing fusion in a star. The rest is just along for the ride. And the star is so hot, fusion is so high in temperature that all of the stuff we see around the core are no longer atoms, but just nuclei. They've been all, the electrons have been just blown off the atom and ionized to the point where now you have just protons loose and running around and electrons loose running around in that envelope around the star. All right. So you have oxygen nuclei. When we don't talk about oxygen atoms, we talk about oxygen nuclei. And it's those nuclei, when they get far enough away from the star, the electrons can jump back in. And when they do, they give off light. And in oxygen's case, that light is green. In hydrogen's case, that light is red. And we see both of those here. At the bottom of the green, you can see a little bit of the red. So that's another Wolf-Rayet star, one of these hotties that's going to go supernova someday. I mean, we got a lot of them out there, so it might be kind of cool. I'd love to see. I'd love to see a supernova someday. You know, really would. So
Are there really a lot of them? I mean, they number just in the hundreds, don't they?
Yeah, but you know, the thing that's interesting is, they are, as you know, really unique stars. They can have masses up to 150 times of our sun's mass. That's massive, obviously, and they can have, as I said, temperatures as high as 200,000 Celsius, which is like 355,000 degrees Fahrenheit on their surface. Again, normal stars have between 3,000 Kelvin on their surface, or just a few thousand degrees Fahrenheit, to having a temperature like our sun, which is like 5,800 Kelvin, around 10,000 degrees. So we're talking about a very, very different scale of temperature when it comes to these Wolf-Rayet stars. And they can be brighter than millions of suns. Now, you know what they say, you look at the sun, you can go blind. Imagine looking at the sun and not even feeling the pain of being melted, because you would literally be vaporized by the luminosity alone of one of these Wolf-Rayet stars. And they have stellar winds that could be 3,000 kilometers per second at their highest. That's pretty heavy duty, you know. And then you create this nebula of dust and gas around them, and no planet could survive that. So, you know, this goes out for several light years. So if you end up with a Wolf-Rayet star in your neighborhood, it's a death sentence to any budding life on that planet, if there's a planet, right? And it includes X-rays, it includes gamma rays. You think getting a couple of X-rays a year is bad at the dentist? Imagine getting the equivalent of 17,000 lifetimes of X-rays in a split second, every split second. That's what you're getting with a Wolf-Rayet star. So it's instant damage to your DNA, instant mutation, instant destruction. Even if you were shielded, some of that radiation would get through. Now, that's, if you think about it, that stellar wind that's leaving the star will eventually collide with other planets, causing significant damage to any atmospheres they may have, any life that may be evolving there. And again, as I said before, if that isn't enough, the final insult is that the star then blows up and obliterates itself. So, hey, if I can't kill you with my X-rays and my gamma rays, I'll blow up and blow you away with really hot material moving out, and you'll have maybe a few years to watch it come to your planet before you're destroyed. I mean, I talk about, gee, that's slow motion destruction, man. I would not want to be there.
So there are other really big, really bright stars that are not Wolf-Rayet stars. I can't think of its name offhand, but the star that's illuminating the California Nebula up around Taurus, coming to that time of year, it's like, I think, if I remember correctly, like 1 million times brighter than the sun.
Is it Menken?
Say again?
Menken?
I think you're right, yes. And you've got Eta Carina down in the southern sky, which is like 100 or 150 times the mass of the sun.
Oh, yeah.
Super big, super bright, super hot. But I don't think either one is a Wolf-Rayet star. Can you say simply what makes a Wolf-Rayet star a Wolf-Rayet star?
Oh, the simplest difference mechanism there is the stellar winds. The stellar winds from a Wolf-Rayet star are strong enough to literally distend and push away its outer envelope, which we don't see with those other stars. They stay intact, but they're just massive. Okay. But the stellar winds of a Wolf-Rayet star can push that envelope away from the star, forming the nebula around them. Now, keep in mind, it also depends on their point in evolution. At the point in evolution where a Wolf-Rayet star is, it's not the same place as, say, Betelgeuse. Now, Betelgeuse used to be an O-type star. Betelgeuse used to be taking hydrogen and turning it into helium ash copiously. It turned the helium into carbon, and then the carbon into nitrogen and oxygen and other isotopes down the line. And it may have iron stuck in its core as the final resting place for nuclear fusion, because that is the end stop for nuclear fusion, because to make iron into anything else requires putting in more energy than you get back. So it can't put in any more energy than it's making. And so iron is like it's stuck in its throat. It's going to be stuck in there and act as a problem over time. But so when we watch a star like Betelgeuse, we watch this thing grow into a red giant. And Betelgeuse is at a spot in its evolution called the asymptotic giant stage, asymptotic giant branch, the AGB. And so it's already gone through its helium burning phase. And then when it runs out, the core collapses again, and it grows for a second time into a red giant. And it's here where, when all the final materials finally end, and it ends with silicon, it actually fuses silicon for 1 day, 24 hours. And in that time, it goes from being a star that's on the verge of going supernova to a star that begins supernova phase. And I say begins supernova phase, and this is something you know as well, Daryl. When we talk about supernovae, a star like Betelgeuse will end up sending out a burst of neutrinos in all directions. And we have neutrino tanks here on the planet. And if we register these neutrinos come in and we could tell where they're coming from, we could then point all of our telescopes in that direction of the sky to see where it's coming from. If Betelgeuse is in that area, we're going to suspect it's Betelgeuse that's actually exploding. Now, I say exploding. Why didn't I say exploded? Well, because the light train is taking, however distant Betelgeuse is taking that many years to get here. I've seen 580 light years. I've seen 750 light years. It's between 580 and 750 light years away. So, but when neutrinos happen, when neutrinos are bursting out from through Betelgeuse, they go through Betelgeuse easier than the actual shock wave of the supernova. And it's neutrinos, believe it or not, that initiate the start of that shock wave. And they hit kind of a wall. And only 1 in a billion of those neutrinos actually get out of Betelgeuse. That's how many neutrinos are created. Trillions upon trillions upon trillions of neutrinos are created, and only 1 in a billion actually get out. But they make a stream, a heavy-duty stream of neutrinos that we'll see here. And when we see that happen, that's the precursor saying, hey, they get out relatively unimpeded. Okay. And there's a shock front now of physical material trying to come out from inside that star, and it's already moving outward. And then it's moving outward. The core is collapsing. And as that shock wave moves out, by the time it reaches the surface, until it reaches the surface, we can't tell anything is different about Betelgeuse except for the neutrino stream, which doesn't do anything to the star itself. So then when it reaches the surface, that's when we get that big burst and that supernova. We're going to see that same process with these Wolf-Rayet stars, except the Wolf-Rayet stars are precursor, have a precursor event where they actually are blowing off that outer layer, unlike the core collapse supernova that just does a core collapse after it runs out of fuel. Now, at Betelgeuse's stage, it does pulsate, and those are called thermal pulses, and it blows off a little material, right? But that material is very different from the material that we see in these nebulae. These nebulae are ionized material, okay, like oxygen and hydrogen. In Betelgeuse's case, it's dusty material because the outer reaches of Betelgeuse are so big that it makes dust, a fine dust out there. And that can actually be released from the star and possibly obscure the star, causing it to dim, as Betelgeuse has done. A long answer, but the basic. Go ahead.
One more question about Wolf-Rayet stars. We have less than 2 minutes left.
I know we do. You're right.
Aren't, so to speak, aren't there different flavors of Wolf-Rayet star?
Yes, there are. There's actually quite a number of Wolf-Rayet stars that are, known. And I think for another edition of Sky Tour, we should probably talk about Wolf-Rayets and the different types there are, because that shows you why, for instance, some nebulae are green and some nebulae are kind of red, like the crescent. So the crescent and Thor's helmet, those represent two different types of Wolf-Rayet star processes, and it would probably behoove us to get into that.
Okay.
You're right.
I believe it's basically like what predominant elements there are in the star, correct?
Yeah, there's an elemental abundance issue. There's also a process issue associated with some of the Wolf-Rayets that is a little bit different in some versus others. Has to do, again, their composition can beget different types of processes, and that's exactly right, what you said. So we'll go through that with some diagrams, which I think will help people understand the difference, because the universe is a strange and a dangerous place. And Wolf-Rayet stars, besides black holes and gamma ray bursters and fast radio bursters and magnetars, the universe is dangerous. And besides all those, Wolf-Rayet stars rank right up there as some of the most dangerous places in the universe. And I think that's a good place to say, hey, I think we're done.
Yeah, I think we're about out of time.
Yeah, but I want to thank everybody for coming in tonight. We had a great time. Daryl, thank you for your good questions and contributions, as always.
Sure.
And you can look for Daryl and I on Sky Tour live stream. And don't forget, if you get a chance, check us out. Okay, Sky Tour Live. You see that right there, skytourlive.com, skytourlive.org. Right. And you can check out some of our new work. My Facebook is down right now. It got hacked by a hacker in Pune, India. So everything is gone for the last 10 years. Not my photos. Sky Tour live stream is intact up there on Facebook. The group is still there, but my personal page is down. And I don't know if it'll come back, but we have hope. So anyway,
say good night, Mark.
Good night, Mark.
Thanks,
everybody.
Mark. Good night, Daryl. Good night, everybody. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, guys. And on that note, I should end as a blur. But thank you very much. We'll talk to you another time. Sky Tour live stream out. Keep looking up.